The reason I call these soapbox sessions is because back in the day, or maybe even present day, people who really had something very important to say would stand upon a soapbox of sorts, meaning a box, a large crate, or something that would elevate them above the crowd so that their voice could be heard with or without a megaphone, because they had something of importance to say. So thank you for listening to another soapbox session. Well, hello there. This is Keisean Rains, and I am driving, heading to one of my many places that I go to accumulate wealth and coin. As per usual, I am recording from Studio C250, and as I'm recording this, I'm having a little moment because last week I actually was informed that my podcast is now streaming on 9 different podcast platforms, and I was pretty freaking excited about that, because why not be excited? You know, who has to explain why you're excited about something? But I was excited about this particular accomplishment because when I started recording in April, I was feeling some type of way about the fact that I was recording from my car, and was like, oh man, you know, it's not professional enough. I don't have professional equipment, and who's going to take it seriously? Is anybody going to listen to it? All those little things, all the little voices that come up in your head when you're actually doing something pretty dope and courageous, but your comfort zone alarm, is what I like to call it, starts to go off like, you've never done this before, you're gonna fail, or something. That's what mine sounds like. Yours might sound a little different. Yours might sound like those annoying car alarms that are like, ooh, beep, beep, beep. You suck. Who knows what yours sounds like? But nonetheless, we all have an inner voice. My friends and I call it just the voice. Not the voices in a television show, but the voice nonetheless. And the voice has many different pitches, many different tones, has many different messages, but some of the most distracting messages are probably the same messages you've heard over and over and over again. And whenever you get ready to do something pretty badass, like stepping outside of your comfort zone or just smashing the walls of your comfort zone and saying, I'm about to do this shit, and I know I've never done it before, and I know that I don't have every single possible necessary tool to do it, except in fact I do have every tool, because I am the tool, because everything that I want to do is already in me, so why do I need to wait for something outside of me to show up so I can do it? See, that's how I know that I've made some growth, because once upon a time, I didn't have that counter voice. Did you hear that counter voice? So did you hear the voice that was like, you ain't shit, and then the counter voice was like, no, but really though, I am? And you heard how the voice was like, you don't have the tools that you need to be able to make shit happen, and the counter voice was like, no, but actually I do, because I am the tools. That took work. It takes work. The voice is that thing inside of you, that voice in your head that tells you all the things that you sort of maybe kind of think about yourself, but don't necessarily want anybody to know that you think it about yourself, so it only happens inside your head. The voice is something that's probably been with you for a very long time. The voice sometimes sounds like your mother's voice, or your father's voice, or your grandma's voice, or the bully from high school's voice, or an ex-person's voice. Sounds like a lot of different things, but 9 times out of 10, what that voice, the original voice, the panic voice, the one that disrupts everything, the one that tries to tell you that you ain't shit when you really are, that voice needs to be silenced on a regular basis. And for those of you who are creatives, actually not even just creatives, let me not even single anybody else out. For those of you that are humans and have goals or dreams or aspirations or things that you want to accomplish in your life and you have yet to do them, 9 times out of 10, I'm actually going to say 10 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, which means all the time, the thing that's really preventing you from accomplishing your goals or creating the things that you want to create is the voice. It's the voice in your head. It's the voice that causes you to hesitate. It's the voice that causes you to procrastinate. It's the voice that causes you to deliberate. No, just kidding. I just wanted to say another 8 word. But it's the voice that causes you to hesitate and procrastinate. And hesitation and procrastination are the killer of dreams. They are the squelcher of really great ideas. And a lot of times we let that voice talk us out of doing some really dope shit. And on the flip side, we also let that voice talk us in to doing some really dumb shit. Take a moment. Really dumb shit. Take a moment and just ponder on some really dumb shit. Like some shit that you look back, you're like, that was dumb. Why'd I do that? Because the voice probably talked you into it and told you it was a really excellent idea. Or ponder on the other side of your brain on some things that you're like, damn, if only I had really taken the time to do that really dope thing that had been implanted in me years and years ago, that came to me in a dream, during a meditation, during a conversation. There it is. And I was just like, oh, damn, that was really dope. And then, like, just totally forgot about it because I got overwhelmed with other stuff, like, stuff that shows up that keeps us from doing the things that we really, really, really are here on this planet in these physical bodies to do. And a lot of times, what keeps us from doing that really dope shit is that really fucked up voice. And some people say the voice has purpose. Like, well, there's a reason we have the voice. And, it's the voice is the voice of ego is what some people call it. And, and to a sense, I agree. That it could be ego because, the ego has a purpose. The ego, some say, is said to protect the soul or protect the heart. The ego often masks itself as the heart or the soul, when in fact it is not. So sometimes the ego might be talking you out of doing something because your higher self or your real self hasn't been nurtured enough to recognize that whatever the ego or whatever that voice is telling you is just not true. I'm going to give you an example. So, starting this podcast, for instance, I have been thinking about starting a podcast for quite some time. And when I say quite some time, I mean pretty much ever since podcasts became a thing. I used to think about being a radio DJ when I was a kid. When I was a kid, my sister had this toy called the Talk Boy. I don't know if you ever saw Home Alone 2. Macaulay Culkin had that little device, and it had like a microphone on one end. It looked like a big old tape cassette player. And you could talk into it and record yourself. And you could change your voice and change the speed of your voice, and you could record music on it, and you could sing over music. It's basically like a portable karaoke / DJ machine cassette player device. It was pretty dope for, the 80s. And when we were kids, I would set my sisters up, well, 2 of my sisters at the time, and I would basically pretend to have like a radio show, and I would record them, and I would ask them questions, and we would make up names. Like one particular interview that I made up was I was interviewing one of my sisters. I pretended that they were a doctor, and her name was cardiovascular surgery, and it was just like silly shit. So I started doing that back then. We'd make up songs. We would sing existing songs on the radio. We would do voices. It was a whole bunch of things. So I was never shy about being on tape or on film, because I also, when I was like a teenager, had access to a video camera, and I would do imitations of, people on Saturday Night Live. Again, I would interview my sisters, and, we would pretend to be celebrities. And, one time my sister was Vanna Black, just random stuff. And I share that with you because as a child, I had this idea, of like, oh, wow, wouldn't it be cool if I could, record funny, interesting stuff and people would listen to it. And at the time, it was mainly on cassette tapes because the video camera technically belonged to my grandfather, so we didn't really have it in our house all the time. But when we did have it, we was making videos. So fast forward to present day, when podcasts kind of became a thing and started growing traction, and people were listening to podcasts as much as they used to listen to talk radio or watch television, if not more, depending on your lifestyle, I was thinking to myself, I need to do a podcast, And the voice, that bitch, the voice would come up every time and be like, but you know what? You really got to wait until you get all the right equipment, because, you don't want your podcast to be poor quality, because then, it's not representing who you really are. And, you like your things to be quality, and you like your projects and your products to represent you and your brand. And, the voice can also use many different tones that are very, convincing and really get you to believe, yeah, you're right, I should delay on creating this podcast, because, if I don't have something that's going to make it sound perfect, then why would I do it at all? Very convincing, right? That voice had me convinced for years. And I would sit back and I would listen to other podcasts, particularly Super Soul Sunday by the illustrious Oprah Winfrey. And I would listen to a couple of other podcasts that had co-hosts and so on and so forth. And I was like, dang, that sounds so good. Dang, I gotta wait till I get that special microphone, or I have to wait till I get access to a recording studio. And when I have a studio, then I need to find an engineer. And then I gotta get advertising agreement so that I can monetize it. And so I'm going to delay. And at one point, it sounded like I was really convinced that my delay plan was actually a really great plan. So when people would be like, hey, when are you going to do that podcast? I'd be like, oh, I'm just getting everything in order and, getting all my ducks in a row and making sure that all the participles and everything is in place. And then the wonderful podcast, it'll be coming. And then, of course, it wasn't going anywhere. It wasn't doing anything. It wasn't going anywhere. I was jotting down ideas in my phone, in the notes on my phone. I was writing things down of topics that I wanted to talk about, people that I wanted to feature, and had all these really great, like, pre-production things in place. And eventually got to the point where it was like, okay, so you've prepared as much as you possibly can. What are you waiting for to actually start recording? And at that point, I still didn't have the equipment, because the way my bank account was set up is that to quote Kevin Hart, is the checking in and savings, and my checking is zero, and my savings is so going out and buying a bunch of equipment wasn't really the most sound financial decision for me to make at that particular time. However, delaying the podcast for another day was not the most soul appeasing decision at that particular time. I went through some major transitions, which we're all going through transitions all the time, otherwise you're not even alive. We're all going through changes all the time, and I had some major changes happen a couple of months ago that really put me in a position where it was kind of like the universe, spirit, goddess, Earl, whatever you want to call it, was like, shit or get off the pot. I don't know if you're familiar with the phrase shit or get off the pot, which is pretty self-explanatory, but if you'd like, I can explain. What that phrase basically means is shit, actually do what it is you came here to do, or get off the pot, or raise up and make room for somebody else to do it. So for me, I had a shit or get off the pot moment where all these things that I've been thinking about doing, starting the podcast, working on a second book, building a course around philosophies of yoga, setting up another course around philosophies around relationships. These are things that I've been thinking about doing for quite some time. But I allowed the voice to create all sorts of really convincing delay plans instead of actually implementing any of these really cool ideas and making them happen. And a lot of the reason why the voice was so convincing was because it was telling me that everything needed to be perfect before I could produce it or publish it. It had to be perfect, because perfect is what people like, right? People want perfect bodies, people want perfect voices, people want perfect hair, people want perfect relationships, people want perfect. But the reality though, y'all, is perfection is an illusion. There is no such thing as perfect. Not even the most beautiful flower that blooms in nature is perfect. It's beautiful, it's fragrant, it's soft, it's lovely to look at, it's lovely to smell, but it's not perfect, because if you look at it closely, you'll see even the flaws in the most beautiful things. And I know some people are like, well, duh, nothing's perfect. Well, yeah, I know we all say that aloud to other people, but inside of our minds, some of us, maybe not all y'all, but some of y'all understand what I'm saying, which is you have convinced yourself that before you can take a big step or a leap or create something or do something different, that you have to wait until the perfect scenario presents itself. Like, a lot of people deal with this when they're in a career that they don't love. I know people who have been in the same career for like a long time, over a decade, where they get up and they go to work solely for the paycheck. And if it were not for the paycheck, they would not get out of the bed. I know a couple people like that. And truth be told, those people have all kinds of other really interesting coping methods that they adopt in order to deal with the fact that they really hate their fucking job, but they just don't want to leave their job because they're waiting for the perfect scenario to present itself before they exit. When in reality, ain't no such thing as a perfect scenario. Ain't no such thing as perfect. It's not possible. Perfection does not exist. Perfection is literally an illusion. It is something that we have created in our minds that says, until everything looks like this, I can't do that. But the reality is that if you can't believe that that is even possible, so much as you can breathe it, feel it, taste it, touch it, smell it, live it like it's real, it's not going to show up anyway. So meanwhile, while you're waiting for this perfect situation to show up so that you can experience that perfect life, you're going to be waiting for a very long time, and you're going to get very sad and angry, and you're going to be mean to people, and you're going to abuse drugs and alcohol and people. You're going to do all kind of evil, ill shit, and then you're going to be attracting a whole bunch of evil, ill shit into your life, and then you're just going to keep doing that over and over and over and over and over again because you're caught in a shit cycle. When instead, when you can conceive of something, which means you can imagine it so much, so clear that you could write it down and tell other people about it. When you can conceive of something that you want in your life, whether it's a new career or a new house or a new car or a new body or a new boo or a new pet or some travel or whatever it is that you want, if you can conceive of it, again, which means you see it so clearly that you can feel it, taste it, smell it, touch it, and describe it to someone else. And then you take it a step further and you can that's not really, that is a word, but the word I meant to say was further. You can take it a step further and you can actually believe it. Now, this is where a lot of people get stuck. And when I say a lot of people, I mean most people. When I say most people, I mean me, everybody. We get stuck in the believing it, because conceiving of things, like I can conceive of myself going to Peru and South America and Costa Rica. I can conceive of myself walking out onto the deck of my beautiful oceanfront cabin situation, because I know there's another word for it, but I can't describe it, in, Bora Bora. I can conceive of myself staying in a treehouse in Sri Lanka. I can conceive of myself practicing yoga in front of a temple in Bali. I can conceive of those things. Believing it takes another part of you, and that is the part that the voice loves to attack. The part of you that's like, yeah, that would be really dope. Wow, Bali. Yeah. Oh man, I can almost smell the flowers. I can feel the moist air on my skin. I can hear the sounds of the temples and people chanting, and I can smell the incense burning in the air, and I can feel my yoga mat between my feet, and I can even see my body going through the asanas and breathing through the poses and meditating in such a beautiful, wonderful space. Ooh, that feels good, because I can conceive of it. Yeah. Believing it. As soon as I say believe it, that means that I'm telling myself that it is real, that it is already done, that I am there, that all that I just described is actually happening right now. And a lot of times people are like, but really though, but it's not happening, because you're in your car and you're driving on the freeway and you're recording a podcast from your cellular device and you're not in Bali, and that's what the voice starts to do. And the voice starts to say, well, that's not really what's happening right now. What's happening right now is da 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 da. But the real thing that you have to start to open yourself up to, how many times can we say two? Two. The thing is, you have to allow yourself, I paused because I didn't want to say two again. Allow yourself the opportunity to expand your ability to believe beyond what's happening right now. Meaning beyond what you can see happening right now. Like, there's a quote somebody said, again, I told you guys before, I don't really do well with quotes, I paraphrase, but there's a quote that says, the sun came up in China today. I didn't see it, but I know it's there. You know what I mean? The sun came up in a whole lot of places today. I didn't see it, but I know that it's there. So the thing is, when it comes to things and desires and experiences, people, places, things, nouns, whatever you want in your life, if you can conceive of it, then you can believe it, then it shows up, then it's just there. And that's not just some okey doke Napoleon Hill type shit, conceive, believe, receive. It's actually like real talk. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, law of attraction, all this belief, manifestation, blah, 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 buzzwords. It's like the new thing. Like, I'm manifesting this right now, and I'm manifesting that, and I'm calling this in, and I'm calling that in. And people think you're like totally weird and, you know, hippity dippity and airy fairy and woo woo. And I'm like, yeah, I'm over here woo wooing through life. I sure am. Woo woo woo. Can you woo woo woo? I can woo woo woo. And I am woo wooing. And you know what? So what if it feels a little weird at first? Because when that shit actually starts working and things actually start showing up and you actually start having experiences and you look back and be like, oh my God, I remember when I was talking and dreaming and thinking about this. I remember when I was conceiving this. I remember the moment where I stopped doubting and I actually started believing this. And now here it is. And I'm receiving it. And it's actually happening right now. Not in the figurative now, but in the actual now. And I know that the voice can be a powerful motherfucker and loud sometimes. And it always comes up when you're about to do something really, really dope. Always. It comes up. The voice ain't bothering you when you're binge watching, you know, your favorite show on Netflix, Hulu, or otherwise. The voice doesn't come up when you're chilling, you know, eating Starbursts, you know what I mean, instead of cereal, instead of a real meal. The voice doesn't even really come up when you're doing anything that's not necessarily what I would consider to be productive. When you're comfortable. And I don't mean comfortable as in don't ever be comfortable, don't ever relax. I'm not saying that. But you know what I mean? When you're comfortable, when you're in your comfort zone, because comfort and complacency are like first cousins. They sit real close to each other and could technically be like sisters, but they're not. Comfort and complacency are very close in that you can often tell yourself and others, well, I'm just comfortable. I'm comfortable. I don't really need to make any changes in my life right now because, you know, I'm comfortable. I'm cool. I'm chilling. And that's okay until it's not. Until the real you is like, damn, I actually do want to make some changes in my life, but I'm actually just petrified and terrified and afraid and confused and not sure where to begin. And this voice inside my head is telling me to wait till things are perfect, so I actually just won't do anything. I'm just going to stay here and be comfortable. That's complacency. That's some bullshit. That's not what you really want. That's not what any of us really want. So for me, when it came to creating this podcast, I was comfortable in my complacency in waiting for the perfect situation, as in access to a studio, professional equipment, etc., to present itself before I produced this podcast. But then something happened, things changed in my life. I got to a point where I was like, just kidding, waiting for the perfection is bullshit because I've been waiting for a long time and it's still not showing up. So maybe I should just try something different and just go for the gusto, balls to the wall, and just see what happens. And I did. And I was like, where's the quietest place that I can possibly think of to record? Oh, the front seat of my car. Apple makes some really fantastic products, so why not record on my iPhone? Found this really dope app that actually helps me to produce and do the quote-unquote engineering part of this, and I can publish it to multiple platforms at one time. And I watched my traction grow. I watched my numbers change. I watched as more and more and more people started listening and more people started subscribing and sharing. Every single person that I asked to be a guest has said yes. We have managed to record. We, as in myself and my guests, have recorded over 26 episodes since we started in April. I have episodes in archive, y'all, like put away for later times. And I'm recording these episodes of Soapbox Sessions myself. So I share that because I want you to know that if there is something in you, and there's something in all of us, we all come onto this earth, onto this planet with a very, very specific purpose, a very specific plan, a very specific task is what some people will call it on our lives. And the moment when you realize what that is, and there's always a moment, like I had a moment when I was younger than I am now, where I had this vision of myself as what some would call like a preacher. But I wasn't like a preacher like, yes, wearing a robe and shit and Bible thumping. It wasn't that. It was more so me in a large space in front of a huge amount of people talking about the things that I talk about now. Talking about love, talking about peace, talking about hope, talking about wisdom, talking about communication, talking about family, talking about relationships, talking about travel, talking about funny shit. You know what I mean? That's what I saw. And I remember in that moment, I was like, a preacher? Pfft, I'm not trying to be a preacher, because I wasn't trying to be a preacher. And so over time, the more that I've gotten to know myself and the more clear that I've gotten on that vision, I'm able to conceive, oh, this is what I am. Now, some people will call it a coach, a speaker, a motivator, an author. Someone gave me the coolest way to describe this one night, and I can't even remember who they are, but they said, they said, you, Keisean, are an igniter. And I was like, ooh, ignite. I'm an igniter. Like, just imagine going to a party in LA, be like, oh, so what's your name? Because, in LA, everybody's like, who are you and what do you do? Because I really want to know who you are and what do you do so I can judge you right away. Whole other conversation. Anyway, who are you and what do you do? So I'm like imagining myself, the next time I go to a social setting where there's people that I don't know, that don't already know me, that I get to be like, hi, I'm Keisean Rains. And what do you do? I'm an igniter. And just like let it sit, like boom. Marinate on that for a minute. I'm an igniter. Like, doesn't that sound like a superhero? Like Keisean Rains, the igniter. Yeah, an igniter. And when he said that, it was definitely a he who said it. I was like, holy shit. Hell, yeah. Igniter of all types of shit. Inspiration, empowerment, positive impact, healing, creativity, motivation. I ignite all that shit. And it feels really good. And those are the types of things that I get to say to that voice when it tries to come up and tell me I ain't shit. Or that I don't have what it takes because I don't have a degree, or because I don't have a piece of paper that legitimizes my education, or because I don't have more than the amount of dollars in my bank account, or because I'm not in a relationship right now, or because I'm in this nomadic journey and my address changes every couple of weeks. Nah. That's what the voice says. And I'm like, yep, sure does. And all the while, I'm an igniter. So that's all that I have to say about this particular topic for today. And I just want each and every one of you who listens to this to identify your voice and really start to get clear on when your voice, when the voice that tells you ain't shit, is talking loud. And I want you to practice silencing that voice. And you don't have to be like, oh my God, could you please stop? You want to silence that voice like, shut up. Stop talking. The words you're saying are not helpful. Be quiet. You want to silence the voice with some boldness. You want to say it with your chest, as they say. You don't want to just be like, oh my God, voice, could you stop saying that? Because it's really hurtful and I don't like it and it makes me feel like I don't feel very good about myself. You want to say it with power. You want to say, actually, voice, thank you for your opinion. Thank you for your reminders of all the things that I quote unquote did wrong in the past. I appreciate it. But where I am right now in my life is I'm dope as shit. I am amazing. I am powerful. I am abundant. I am prosperous. I am beautiful, intelligent, creative, and fluid, and there is nothing that I cannot do. So thank you for stopping by, voice. But today ain't that day. And that's what you get to do. And if you need support, reach out. So I appreciate you guys for listening, and I look forward to connecting with everybody who listens to this podcast sometime in the future. This is Keisean Rains. Thank you for listening to another episode of Working Title. Peace. It's time to wrap this up, and I just want to say very sincerely thank you. You have your choice of thousands of different podcasts that you could be listening to each day, and I appreciate you for choosing this to be one of them. Right now, in this moment, I see the light, I see the love, the wisdom, the beauty, the prosperity, the creativity, and the pure joy that shines within each of you, and I bow humbly before your divinity. Namaste.
The podcast you just heard was published with Anchor. Got something you want to say to the creator of this show? Send them a voice message using the Anchor app, free for iOS and Android.